Well, welcome back to the channel, everyone. It's Nicola Cairncross here, and today I thought I'd talk about business mentoring. As you know, I've just released a video which was the second chat with my business mentor, Greg. I'm very lucky, actually. I have several mentors who I think of as mentors anyway, and it's an interesting arrangement having a mentor of any kind. And I thought I'd just tell you about a few that I've had in my life and then tell you how to go about finding one if you're interested in such a thing. My first mentor, though I didn't know it at the time, was a guy called Dr. Pitt. I went to work for him as a receptionist at the tender age of about 17, and it was funny. I used to work 3 nights a week for him, because he was one of those old school doctors who used to sit there. He'd open his surgery and then people would come along and wait, and he would stay there until everyone had been seen. And his waiting room was always full, but it was always empty by the time he went home. And that was an interesting arrangement as a youngster, because it was really brilliant customer service. And I used to really enjoy being the receptionist. I used to sit in this sort of strange old-fashioned area. People would come in, they put their name down, they go and sit in the waiting room, and I'd go and get their records out. And in between patients, I'd take more records into the doctor. And then at the end of the surgery, I'd go and sit and have a chat with him. Yeah, he was in his 60s by then, and he was an incredibly well-educated chap. He was also extremely rich, which I found out later on in life, because he owned half of Worthing. And he used to go off twice a year to the south of France, where his ex-wife had a flat. And she would come and stay in England for a month, and he would go and stay in her flat for a month. But although my family and friends used to take the mickey out of me and say that he was trying to seduce me, as it were, nothing untoward ever happened between us, and he was an incredible gentleman. So we used to have these after surgery chats, and he was the first person really that had shown an interest in me and what I thought as a grown-up. No grown-ups were treating us as grown-ups at the age of 16 or 17 in the 70s. And it was really very funny, because he was friends with some of our parents. Well, my friend Kim's father particularly, because he used to buy his Renaults from him. So sometimes Dr. Pitt would do naughty things like invite us along to one of the garages open evenings. And there would be Kim and I dressed up as punk rockers or new romantics or whatever, Dexys Midnight Runners, whatever we were wearing at the time. And Dr. Pitt seemed to take great delight in flaunting us youngsters as his consorts for the evening with all these straight Worthing business people. It was really quite funny. But towards the end of the time working for him, which was when I was about 19, I suppose, he used to start taking me out for lunch on Saturday, because we'd do the 3 evenings and then the Saturday morning. And he used to take me out and drive me around into the country and take me to really beautiful restaurants. And we'd carry on our conversations there. And he would teach me how to be not intimidated by snooty waiters. Because again, I was wearing whatever I was wearing in those days, and he didn't care. He was routinely dressed in corduroy trousers, a tweed jacket, one of those checked sort of flannel cotton shirts with some sort of green knitted tie. He was very much the country gentleman look, whereas I was whatever was the fashion at the time. And looking back on those outings into the countryside, they were very, very happy times, because we would talk about literally anything. And on the drives, he would show me places around Sussex, and it was just great anyway. So I would think of him as my first mentor, and we kept in touch until I had my first baby, Phoebe, and she was born when I was about 33, 34. So every time I went to Worthing, I'd go and see him. We'd have lunch or we'd have dinner, and we'd talk about life. And he used to give me advice about what life was like. And looking back, he must have found me so gauche. I can't believe it really that we were friends, but we genuinely were. So that was nice. He died just after Phoebe was born, so that must have been when I was about 34, 35, and it was really very sad. He had a beautiful, beautiful old house in Worthing, right in the town centre, a big old Victorian mansion with its own grounds, and it must have sold for an absolute packet, because it was turned into flats shortly afterwards. So who was my next real mentor? I think my next one must have been Benny Gray from the Space Organisation. I've told the story many times, but basically I applied to be his VA. I'd had 2 children, we'd run out of money, my husband had just been made redundant from the music industry again, and I was applying for personal assistant jobs, not VAs, PAs, as I could type. And I was worth so much more than that, because I'd already run several companies, but I'd even been invited to be on Dragon's Den as an entrepreneur in 1999. But things weren't going well financially, although I was very happy in my personal life. And I went to apply for a personal assistance job to arts entrepreneur. It was in The Guardian. And he lived in Hampstead. He lived in Hampstead, and he had a Gothic pile in Hampstead. And I knew the minute I walked in the door that I wanted to work for this chap, because he was like a 6'4" Doctor Who, if you can imagine such a thing, with a velvet coat and a long scarf and grey curly hair. And he was incredibly dynamic, and he used to stride everywhere very fast. And he ran the space organisation, and it was a place that used to take up big buildings and turn them into creative spaces for all sorts of kind of people. So there was Camelot Production Studios. Ironically, my husband had used to work. There was Big Peg in Birmingham. There was Custard Factory in Birmingham. It was Gray's Antiques in Mayfair. There was Alfie's Antiques off the Edgware Road. There was Ardnassie Castle in Scotland, and I think, you know, the space organisation still owns all these places. Anyway, I went for a job. I thought the first interview went really well. I came back off holiday, especially on the day I knew he was doing second interviews, and my letter telling me to come for a second interview wasn't there. So I talk in one of my other videos what I'd done to make myself so secure that I had got a second interview. But essentially, I'd gone around to all of his buildings, and I'd done a secret shopper report on each of them, and I'd really said what was great about them, what I'd noticed that could be improved about them. I talked about atmosphere, I talked about facilities, I talked about the people I talked about what other business opportunities I could see for each building. So I was pretty confident I was going to get that job. And anyway, the letter wasn't there, so I did something very uncharacteristic for me. I hate telephone calls. I especially hate cold telephone calls, making them particularly. So I called him up and I said, "Hi Ben, it's Nicola here." And he said, "Oh, hi Nicola, I'm glad you've called." And I said, "Well, I know you're doing second interviews today, and I've just come back off my holiday in Worthing because I'm pretty, very keen to work for you." And he said, "Well, I'm glad you called me because there is no letter. I think you'd be absolutely terrible as my personal assistant." He said, "In fact, I think you'd be terrible as anyone's personal assistant." He said, "But I really, really, really liked what you did with the reports, and I loved the initiative you took. And I don't let people like you go to waste. So come in on Monday, we'll start you on X amount." And it was actually more. It was more than the personal assistant's salary had been. He said, "And we'll work out some kind of bonus scheme once we work out how you can make me some money," because he said, "I know you're going to make me some money." So that was absolutely fabulous. And he very much was a hands-off entrepreneur and employer. He used to insist that I sent him a report on a Friday night, just telling him what I'd done to advance the project I was working on. I called myself a special projects manager because that was a lovely title. And he said that was great because that's what I was going to be doing, one special project after another. He used to turn me loose on things that needed doing and nobody else knew how to do. And I'd puzzle it out with him. And so I learnt a lot from him, and he used to get me to do these reports on a Friday night that said what I'd achieved that week towards completing the project, what challenges I'd faced, and what I needed help with. And that was the only three things. And woe betide you if you went home without sending that report. And so the best thing was he could keep a long distance track of whether things were progressing without micromanaging. He also I was based in Gray's Antiques in Mayfair, fabulous, fabulous place. He used to pop down at least once or twice a week. But he was pretty good. I mean, I was coming in from Worthing. So by that time I'd moved to Worthing and I was coming in from Worthing. So times weren't an issue. If I wanted to go home early one night, it was fine. If I stayed a bit later one night, it was fine. If I came in a bit later in the morning because the train was a bit late, it was fine. He wasn't micromanaging. I absolutely loved that job. It was a dream job. It really was. Kept in touch with him afterwards, came up to London a few times and had lunch with him a few times. He was always trying to recruit me back. So that was my second ever mentor. My third mentor was not far behind. It was a lady Jill Fielding, who I met through, I can't remember that either now, but I remember we were both training as coaches. She was just about to be on the Secret Millionaire programme first series. She was the blonde lady who managed to succeed as a secret millionaire. And Channel 4 that was, if you want to go back and watch it. And yeah, we started a company together called The Wealth Company because she hated marketing. She had the content knowledge. She had lots of content knowledge I wanted to learn because I was really interested in wealth creation by then and what makes people different financially and psychologically, what makes people different from people who are rich from people who are poor. And obviously I was trying to learn that for myself at the time. And she didn't like marketing, she didn't like organising things, she liked to just turn up and be the talent. And she used to describe it as, I like to turn up and switch the light of possibility on for people. And she always did that, which reminded people of her. She took me under her wing. She taught me how to organise amazing events. I hated organising events, but I did it anyway. And I learned a lot from her, because we were friends, and by some mysterious synchronicity, which, you know, you get used to it after a while, the synchronicity around this stuff, but it turned out she lived just up the road from me, which was really weird. You know, we were talking on the phone one day about how we could work together, and she said, well, why don't you just come over for a cup of tea? And I said, well, where are you? And she said, Lewis. And I said, well, I'm in Worthing, that's like only down the road. And she could have been anywhere in the country, but she wasn't. So that's another thing when you start out on the path to success and you decide to take responsibility for yourself, and you decide that nothing's going to stop you come hell or high water, then doors start to open and people start to appear, and it's all rather magic. And then after that, what happened? My next set of mentors are the ones that I'm still friends with now, and they've become much more than just mentors, they become friends. But this is a good story, I bought my hotel in Worthing, the Acacia, and I got it up and running, and there was a series of people running it, and at this point it was my dad and his wife were running it for me, because I was running my coaching business and I bought the hotel on the side kind of thing. And we decided, Irving and I, that it would be a good opportunity to try doing what we both dreamed of, which was living abroad, while my dad was in charge, because, you know, we thought if we trust anyone, it would be my dad. And so we went off, and we were living in Spain at the time. We'd gone to Greece first and then Spain, and living in the south of Spain near Casares and Estepona. So I used to drive backwards and forwards once a month to the airport and get on a plane to Worthing and go, because we were having workshops. I was either going to one of my mentors' workshops, or I was Jill's, or by that time Chris Barrow as well. He'd turned into a bit of a mentor. And I was going to his dentist workshops. And then also I was hosting workshops once a quarter at my own hotel on the money gym topics, which were investing in the stock market, investing in property, investing in businesses, growing a business, having an internet business. And I think the fourth one was the mindset workshop. And I'd get guests and experts down for those workshops, and I'd come back from Spain and we'd host them in the hotel, and people would come and take over the hotel for the weekend. It was a great way of filling up a hotel that was really catering to business people at the weekends. And my sister rang me up one day. See, this is what I mean about synchronicity. She never goes anywhere on her own. She doesn't even like to go to a restaurant and wait for you. You know, if you're not there within 5 minutes, she's getting very twitchy and she's texting you because she feels self-conscious. And what she did was she did something very uncharacteristic for her when she had a web design business. She went to a BNI breakfast. Never been again, never been before. And why she went that day, I've got no idea, but she did. And she sat next to a guy called Pete, who was working for a manufacturing company. He was in sales, and they were manufacturing windows at the time, and Sarah had just bought a house, no money down, pretty much. And I bought my hotel, no money down as well. We both learnt the same technique by going to property workshops. And she'd pulled it off and bought herself a 3-bedroom flat in Worthing, and she needed new windows for it. So she got chatting to Pete. Pete said, I'm in the window business. Why don't you come up and see my business partners? And she went up to see them, and she took, and she told him that she bought the property, no money down. Her sister had bought a hotel, no money down as well. So they were very intrigued because they were really just getting into property big time then. And so she went up to see them at their office, and they talked property for a couple of hours while Spencer, who is now a strapping lad of about 27, has crawled around the floor, making himself generally useful. Not. But they were intrigued by her. They were intrigued by my story. And she rang me up in Spain and she said, you've got to come and meet these guys. She said, next time you're back for one of your workshops, you've got to come and meet them. And so she told them about me. I came back for one of my workshops. I went up to meet them because, again, they lived just up the road, which was another blooming coincidence, isn't it? It's magic, or synchronicity, actually. If you've ever read a book called, Synchronicity, The Inner Path of Leadership, I think it's called, and it's by Joseph Jaworski. And that will explain to you that once you make these decisions to set off on the road to success or wealth or freedom or fame or whatever, once you make that decision and you start taking 100% responsibility, then people will come and the doors will open. And you'll find people all over the shop. They'll be like, you'll be stepping over them, pretty much, people who can help you. And so those, Andy, Greg and Pete, all became great friends and mentors of mine, and I still work with both of them, and Greg has become my mentor, specifically around the business because he's the ops man. Whereas Andy's my mentor when it comes to things like mindset and wealth creation and investing. So I'm very, very lucky, and I know that. Stop playing with Nicola Cairncross here, and I'd like to quickly interrupt this video. As you may or may not know, I have a business called Clicks and Leads Academy, which is not just about marketing your business better online, although we do cover that. It's also about becoming a better entrepreneur. So if you like the sound of that, you can come over to clicksandleads.academy. See you on the other side. If I hadn't got off that plane and gone to meet these guys on the say-so of my sister, who'd met them on an off chance just by going to one BNI meeting, you open your heart and you open your mind, and it's like you know the Pokemon game where you walk around in real life and there's all this sort of magic stuff happening in the background? It's a bit like that. That's what happens. And so if you're looking for a mentor, the first thing to do is to take 100% responsibility for your life and success, because no mentor wants to be leaned on. They're there to give you advice, but they're not there to give you emotional support. Although I've got to say, Greg does sometimes when I'm having a bit of a wobble. So what you've got to do is you've got to take 100% responsibility for your own success, and then you've got to open your eyes and open your heart and be ready to meet people, and to also say to people, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm looking for a mentor. Do you know anyone? Now, what will happen is that most mentorships are unpaid. Most of the time, the mentor just likes the cut of your jib. They see something special in you. They see a spark of life in your eyes that they don't see in other people. And they just... Sorry about all the noises in the background. It's a lovely sunny day on the river, and what you can't see is just behind the camera is a fabulous river view, and there is a little airport in Shoreham as well. So we've got helicopters, we've got light airplanes, we've got paddle boarders, we've got people in boats, and we've got fisher boats going up and down as well. Anyway, as I was saying, they'll see something in you, and it's not usually a paid formal arrangement, but often what happens is by joining other people's communities, you'll meet a mentor through that. I'm pretty sure that's how I met Jill. I'm pretty sure that Sarah paid to go to that BNI breakfast, and she met Pete, who then introduced me to the others. And so you'll often find that you have to invest in yourself, but often that's not the thing that ends up being the mentoring arrangement. But you'll often meet your mentor through an arrangement like that, where you've had to pay some money to go to a conference, pay some money to go to a workshop, pay some money to go to a networking event. You know, you've had to put yourself out there a little bit financially and psychologically. Perhaps it's because there's a lot of business people go to these things, and you're more likely to find a business mentor if you hang out where business people go. How does mentoring arrangement work? Well, sometimes it's very informal. Sometimes you just meet up occasionally for lunch or dinner, or go to the pub or whatever. And sometimes it's a lot more formal, where they say, look, you can email me once a week and give me a call if you're really desperate, and we'll get together once a month, or once every 3 months is sometimes often enough. And as Greg and I were saying in the interview yesterday, if you haven't watched that yet, go and watch it. It's absolutely brilliant. You can see the way his brain thinks completely differently to mine. And actually, he stumps me on several occasions in that interview, which is quite funny, because I'm sitting there staring at the camera thinking, I've got no idea what he's talking about. And then it all comes clear. So go and watch the interview. It's quite funny if you know me. It can be an informal arrangement. It can be a little bit more formalised. But, you know, you sort of generally fall into a pattern of working together that suits you both. And as I say, they're not there to be your emotional support, although they will often give you words of advice about how they've overcome psychological challenges themselves. You just got to just ask, basically, just talk to them. They will give you advice and they will help you and they will save you a fortune as well as making you a fortune, because they know all the pitfalls, they know all the mistakes that they've fallen into. So it's always a good idea to try and find a mentor that's done something that you want to do, even if they're not exactly in the same sector as you are. They can often be in a, they've built a successful business in the entertainment business perhaps, and you're in one bit and they're in a different bit. Or they've been in manufacturing and you're in manufacturing, or they've done an internet marketing business and you want to be an internet marketing business of some kind. So it's a good idea to try and find someone who's a bit aligned to what you want to do. They'll know all the sector-specific pitfalls. What else do I want to tell you? Oh yes, I want to tell you about how I find the people I mentor. There's one of my son's friends at the moment who I mentor on a very ad hoc basis. He's the only one who got really interested in Bitcoin. Well, and that's not true. There were a lot of them that got interested in Bitcoin, but only when it was going up. He got interested in it a lot more deeply than others. He wanted to know all about how the money system works. And then he came to me just recently. He said, what else can I invest in? He said, I've still got excess cash coming through and I'd like to invest it in something else. So I said, well, have I ever talked to you about silver? And he said, no. So we got into the whole precious metals conversation and how important it's going to be when the dollar collapses and stops being the world reserve currency. That's a topic for another video, but it's coming fairly soon. Yeah, he took real good notes and went off and took action. And that's the one thing that my mentees have to do for me. They have to prove to me that they're going to take some action. And I'll often give people who ask me to mentor them, I often give them little tests. So are you willing to buy my book and read it or listen to it? Are you willing to join my community? Just to show that you're willing to take some action. And then I'll often give you above and beyond. If I can see the spark of life in your eye and that you're willing to take action, I'll often give you above and beyond what you're paying for in terms of advice and support and help. And I know that all of my ex-clients would say that they can contact me at any time and I will give them as much help and advice as I can on the spot. And I'll often refer people to other experts if I think that they'll do a better job than I will on any particular topic. So I hope this has inspired you to go out and find your own mentor if you don't have one yet. As I say, it's a good idea to have lots of different mentors if you can. It's not being greedy. That's one of the things that gives people most pleasure when they've made it, when they've become successful, is helping other people. But it's got to be the people who show a spark of life and take some action themselves. If you've got any questions, don't hesitate to put them in the comments below, and I will see you next time.